New York, business, art, and architectural center of the world and a symbol of freedom. A major contributor to the improvement of New York's quality of life is Sidamon-Eristoff's family. Eristoff's American dream started from grandfather Simon. He was a Georgian aristocrat army officer who was fighting against Russian invasion. In 1921, immigrated to America. Filled with his country's faith and mission, together with pianist Irakli Orbeliani, they found the Caucasus House of Unity in New York called Alaverdi, which was known as a Caucasian heaven. It was a fellowship center where many immigrants found their peace. Simon's children, Konstantin and Anna, grew up in Alaverdi's environment. Anna, a Columbia Law School graduate, joined the United States Attorney's Office, and she's been appointed the Chief of Environmental Protection Unit in 1973. Konstantin was a mining engineer. Vietnam War's veteran, lawyer, Vice Mayor of New York, and his legacy continues to impact the lives of many New Yorkers and Georgians as well. Today, the Sidamon-Eristoff's family continues to serve their country and the global community. Their involvement in political and environmental fields makes a difference and delivers the true Christian message to us to take care of people, one's country, and the world. I had the pleasure to meet with Konstantin's son, Simon Sidamon-Eristoff, who shared with me his memories about his family and his inspirations to make the world a safe place. Our program's guest is a very special person, very close and dear to every Georgian's heart, who is a descendant from Georgian nobility, Mr. Simon Sidamon-Eristoff. His grandfather immigrated from Georgia in 1921 to the United States, and although all his children grow up here in America, this family never lost their ties to Georgia. Mr. Eristoff, I'm very pleased to be here and especially attend the annual supper of a great organization as an American Friends of Georgia. Please tell us history about that organization.
Well, back in 1994, my father, who saw that Georgia was going through a very difficult period in its history, decided that he wanted to try to help. And he formed this organization just to provide humanitarian aid and to the most vulnerable people in Georgia, children who needed a place to sleep, children who were suffering from cancer, orphans, street orphans, the elderly who needed hospice care. That has been the main focus, but also the preservation of the culture of Georgia. And that was a long time ago now, 1994. And the organization has continued. I took it over when he became sick and ultimately died of cancer. But we've managed over that period of time to provide quite a bit of help to Georgia, I think, over the years.
That's a wonderful project, Mikosi. We worked with the Embassy of Japan to fund that, and we built a center for after-school enrichment for not only the 100 war-affected children just inside the border of South Ossetia, but also their parents. And the whole thing was based on Metropolitan Isaiah, and he had been an animation film maker before he went into the church. And so this wonderful festival every September where animation filmmakers come from all over the world, including Russia and Poland and different places, and they bring something really important to that area that has suffered a lot since the war, yes. Because of the war. And I love that project, I do, yeah.
Yeah, it's well known that organization does lots of charity work in a social, in educational, in economy, and also in the environmental field in Georgia. So you do all those great things for that country. What is your motivation?
Well, I think it's a family tradition of philanthropy. In my personal case, there are lots of causes that our family has supported. We've been very fortunate, and we want to do something to help other people. And in some ways, that's not purely philanthropic. You get a lot of enjoyment out of helping other people, and maybe that's a somewhat of a Georgian philosophy. But I take great pleasure in being able to help. So I think other members of my family do, and we get something back out of that experience as well.
Great. This organization manages Marusia Chavchavadze, who is also coming from great noble family of Georgia. How your family roads crossed?
Well, I think my father became friends with David Chavchavadze, Marusia's father, in New York.
My father, David Chavchavadze, was born in England and moved to the United States with his parents when he was 3 years old. I was born in the United States. I was born in Washington, D.C. My father's parents escaped the Bolshevik Revolution, and they actually fell in love in London and married there, and quickly got sort of fed up with the London social group that they were in, and left and went to New York.
I'm not sure exactly when that was, but I feel like I've known Marusia my whole life. And in fact, I believe she worked for my brother as his chief of staff when my brother was in political office as a city council member. And so the family ties go way back.
Working for Simon's brother, Andrew Sidamon-Eristoff, who was a city council member. I was his chief of staff for a year. And I moved, at the end of the year, I moved to Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And the phone rang, and it was Connie saying that he had started this nonprofit, American Friends of Georgia, to help them during a difficult post-Soviet transitional period. And would I run it and form it? And I said, I'd never worked for a nonprofit in my life. And he said, just do it. And that's how it started, just do it. And he let me stay. I mean, he suggested that I come back to New York, but I had just moved to Massachusetts, so he let me work from there.
So let me go back from the beginning. When your grandfather emigrated to United States, he was a Georgian aristocrat, military officer, and he was fighting against Russian invasion.
Yes.
And he came here, he got engineer degree, he got married, had 2 children, your father Konstantin and daughter Anne.
He also had a child before he came here, and who was living with his sister when he emigrated.
Yeah.
And she eventually came over as well. So he actually had 3 children.
That's very good.
Irina.
Yeah. And he wrote a book to my grandchildren in a memory of Prince Sidamon-Eristoff. And that's actually a very nice book because it's a very good guide for Georgian immigrants.
There's a lot of Georgian history as well.
Right. And it's not just for Georgian immigrants, immigrants for all, because he gives you a good formula how to be a good, moral, and right immigrant here, and how to give this country your best. That's what this book is all about. And he had a great vision, so he wrote that book.
I think the idea for the book was really from my parents and maybe even my mother. And he they made him sit down in front of one of those old reel-to-reel recorders, and they put a microphone in front of him and made him tell all of the old stories that they had heard him tell, you know, 100 times.
True.
And they saved those recordings.
Right.
And my aunt actually put those recordings on CDs. So I had the opportunity to listen to them in their entirety. And they are just, it is so strange to hear his voice speaking to you, you know, just, you know, as if he's right there. And I asked my father if he wanted to listen, and he said, no, I can't, you know, I can't do it. But he, you know, that's a wonderful, in addition to the book, that's also a wonderful legacy.
This is a letter, actually the document from Georgia 1913. My grandfather bought the land in a Shida Georgia's village Plavi from Gregory Konstantinovich Eristoff.
Really?
So our relationship
Yes.
started century ago, not just yesterday.
This, you should have this framed.
Right, so that's very interesting, and I'm
wonderful.
very proud. And when
Yeah.
I knew I was coming here, this letter came to my mind. That look at such an old seal.
I know. What year was that?
1913.
1913.
Right, was written. That way they were making deeds.
Yeah.
Your grandfather's son, Constantine, because he had such a great father, he could not be average. When he was serving in New York as a city commissioner, he was called as a Prince of Region 2. And because New York had today very clean water and does not require filtration, that's a deserve of your father.
He served at the city level under Mayor Lindsay. And there was an article in the New York Times that said, City Hall's own prince. But then he served at the state level as part of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority Board. And I think what you're talking about when he was working on clean water issues was he was the Region 2 administrator for the Environmental Protection Agency under George Herbert Walker Bush, the first President Bush. What happened was that the Safe Drinking Water Act requires that every city over a certain size install a filtration plant to filter its water supply so that any pollution that might be in the water is removed. And New York City is obviously a very big city and therefore was subject to the filtration requirement. And it would have cost New York City an enormous amount of money to build a filtration plant. New York City's water comes from a series of reservoirs in upstate New York in the Catskills. And I think the cost was put at $6 or $8 billion to build a filtration plant, which would have been an enormous burden on the city. And my father signed off on and approved a proposal to take a different approach to water cleanliness. He gave them a waiver under the Clean Water Act to avoid filtration if they would implement a plan that protected the land around the reservoirs and made sure that nothing bad that could cause pollution would take place in the watershed, which is the area that drains into the reservoir system. So that saved New York City an enormous amount of money, but it also meant that no chemicals and things were being put in the water. The land in the Catskills would also be preserved. And so that created a great deal of open space and beautiful countryside in the Catskills. And oddly enough, Dad's on his mother's side, not the Georgian side, but his great-grandfather on his mother's side had come to the Catskills from Connecticut. He was the first family member to move to New York. And so in the process of preserving that watershed, Dad was also preserving the backyard around an old family home that he actually still owned, and our family still does own in the Catskills.
Right.
So it was you know, a bit of a backyard preservation deal is what they call it.
That's
but
good.
it's complicated, but it really a lasting legacy. He also reopened an action against General Electric Corporation to have a chemical called the PCBs removed from the Hudson River, which has made the Hudson very clean. And that's another part of his clean water legacy as well.
We need such kind personalities, especially in Georgia.
Well, Georgia is a beautiful country. I mean, I feel like, is there an environmental movement within Georgia?
Yeah, there is. There is, but our water is filtered, so it's not like New York. When I tasted first time this city, New York's water, my mind blew because it's so delicious. Really, you taste water. If you want to taste water, you gotta go to New York. So it really
they call
very
it the
clean.
champagne of drinking water.
It is. And I cannot not mention this. When he was working as a city commissioner during John Lindsay, he was doing quality life issues. He was working on like subway inspections, the bike lines, and to reduce traffic,
You've done your
like
homework,
what we have in Tbilisi big time. So his legacy, more rails, less trucks. What is his philosophy in
More
this
rails, less
or
trucks?
Less trucks.
Well, think about how much you can transport on a train compared to the amount that you can transport by car. It's much more energy efficient, and it's much cheaper to transport goods by rails. So I suppose that's what I can't get inside his head and tell you exactly what he was thinking at that point, but I think that's probably what he had in mind. You know, for every car that we take, I mean, for every person who rides a subway or a train, that's one less automobile, even if maybe you put two people in an automobile. But on average, so people who are drivers should actually care about mass transportation. It's very important to them, even though they think, oh, well, money that's being spent on mass transit is not being spent on me. But only with mass transit can you meet your transportation needs without the traffic really getting out of control. So I wonder whether Tbilisi now is having terrible traffic problems. I understand.
It is terrible, but once we had a great trolley cars there, great electric things, and it was a kind of a forgotten culture now. So they're thinking to rehabilitate this again, but that will be great. Again, that will be more rails, less trucks. Georgian director Rezo Tapukashvili, he's a great documentarist. They wanted to film in a Metropolitan Museum of Art because there was lost treasure, like enamel medallions and parts of the saint icon. Metropolitan Museum of Art, it was not permitted to shoot the film there, and your father was the one
I have never known how he did that. How did he?
How he did that?
Yeah, he made a phone call?
No, he made a phone call, and next day, Rezo receives the phone call in his hotel and said, please come and shoot as much as you want. And they were stunned to hear that, and later they found out it was your father.
დილის 10 საათიდან 3 საათის განმავლობაში შეგიძლიათ აწარმოოთ თქვენი კინოგადაღება. ბედნიერები გავეხურეთ მუზეუმისას. მადლიერებისა და მეგობრობის ნიშნად მუზეუმი თავის თავზე იღებს გადაღებასთან დაკავშირებულ ხარჯებს. მოგვიანოთ შევიწყეთ, რომ ამ საკითხში ჩვენ სასარგებლოდ ჩარეულა ერთი მეტად გავლენიანი ჩვენი თანამემამულე, water.This ამერიკაში დაბადებული, ერთხანს ნიუ-იორკის ვიცე-მერის თანამდებობაზე ნამსახური, ამჟამად საკუთარი საადვოკატო ბიუროს მფლობელი ნიუ-იორკში მეხუთე ავენიუში.
Made possible for Georgian audience to see those lost treasure.
That's one
there.
part of my father's legacy that I didn't really know about. I mean, I
So he
but
was doing things in
we
a
keep
not
finding
saying,
out
right?
all
Not
these good things that he did. Even now, you know, things come out of the
Right.
woodwork.
His efforts will continue to impact New Yorkers and global community many years to come. So,
Thank you. Yeah, no, we're very proud of him,
right.
and very fortunate to have that sort of legacy.
Our ex-president, Mikhail Saakashvili, was very fond of him. Your father had a big influence on his political career. And your family was invited on his inauguration. And how Georgia greeted you when you went there?
Well, I did not go, just my parents. And they say that they were welcomed very, very warmly. The story with Saakashvili is that he was getting a Master's of Laws degree at Columbia University, and I don't know how he made the connection with my father, Georgian. My father had gone to Columbia Law School, and so he arranged an interview for him at his law firm, Patterson, Belknap, Webb, and Tyler. And I think part of the requirement for getting the Master's of Laws degree is that you have some work experience in an American law firm. So that began their friendship, and I think that they had a dinner for him.
Firm,
you know,
right?
When they went over for the inauguration, they were seated right on the podium, kind of right there. Nobody really knew who they were, and the secret police or whoever the security detail held up the entire inauguration until these people who were not in any official capacity until they could be interviewed to find out who they were. Who are these people? But they had already been to Georgia before, and Georgians are welcoming to everybody, but especially to mom and dad. They were just wonderfully welcoming, and they were really treated like celebrities. You know, so it's a wonderful welcome.
Did your father ever thought for his both sons, one fine day they will become presidents of the United States?
I don't know whether in the secret recesses of his imagination that he thought that, but he never was the kind of father who he wanted us to be happy in our careers and successful in whatever it was that we chose to do. And you didn't mention my sister.
And your
but
sister
he might have wanted
also?
her to be
Why?
president too. She is an artist. My brother is more. He has had a very successful political career. He was elected 3 times to the New York City Council, and he served in city government and in state government, and also in New Jersey as the treasurer. Maybe when you were living in New Jersey, I don't know.
Yes, he signed many of my documents.
So if anybody's going to be president, I would like it to be my brother. But my father, I don't think he tried to impose his own ambitions on his children in that way, which is, I think, a good example for a father, for fathers everywhere, really. But my brother's not too old. He still has a chance. So
That's good. We will be #1 supporters.
Yes, exactly. He'll get the Georgian vote.
You followed your father's footsteps, and you are a lawyer, great expert in land protection and environmental issues. So what is your biggest accomplishment? Who are you proud of?
Well, I don't know that I've had any very significant accomplishments, but I've had the opportunity to be involved in several nonprofit organizations, and I not only the chairman of American Friends of Georgia, but right now the chairman of an ocean conservation group called Oceana, that is the world's largest organization devoted solely to the health of the oceans. And we have grown that organization over the last 12 years from a budget of about $3 or $4 million to this year a $40 million organization.
Wow.
It has offices all over the world, not just in North America, Canada, here in Washington. We're opening an office in Mexico, Belize, Peru, Chile, the Philippines.
Maybe one day we'll be in Georgia too.
Well, maybe. At this rate, yeah. But I mean, all through Europe, and it's been that being part of that project has been something that I'm very proud of, and sort of starting something new and seeing it grow into something that is a real sort of worldwide force.
Great.
But that's not a personal accomplishment. That's a group thing.
Well, still. So I met yesterday your wife. She's a very nice personality. She's very classy, very warm, very caring. How much role does she play in your success?
I certainly wouldn't have achieved very much without her support and encouragement. Mostly, we've been married since 1982. And I think that, having a happy, stable marriage and home situation and children gives you the base to work from to accomplish anything. That's the most important part of my life is those relationships with my family. And without that being happy, then nothing else really would be possible. So.
And when I look at your family, I see they're all members of family, very close to each other. They're not split apart. They kind of coming close, very, very tight, like a one fist together.
Yeah.
In the good times, in the bad times. That's a very Georgian tradition, very Georgian gene, I see.
That's interesting.
The way you approach to family values. Big part in this plays your mother, who keeps family together.
She does, the matriarch. Yeah.
Right, and she became somehow a little bit of Georgian. I
think she is. She's certainly an honorary Georgian. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time. Things you do for Georgia and for many of us.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.